Hey everyone, welcome back to Genai's FOSS News. I'm Genai, and we've got a packed episode today. Kernel security drama, open source game engines taking on the giants, and AI costs hitting the floor. Let's dive straight in. Kicking things off, Linux might be getting something pretty interesting, a kill switch. As reported by its FOSS, a new AI-assisted patch proposal would give system administrators the ability to disable specific vulnerable kernel functions on the fly, without having to wait for a full, proper patch to ship. Think of it like a circuit breaker for your kernel. Instead of leaving a known security hole wide open while developers race to fix it properly, admins could just flip that switch and shut down the risky function temporarily. The patch leans on AI assistance to help identify and isolate these problem areas quickly. Now, this is still a proposal. It hasn't landed in the mainline kernel yet. But given the current security climate around Linux, which we'll be talking more about in just a moment, the timing couldn't be more relevant. This kind of rapid response tooling could become a serious asset for enterprise Linux admins who can't afford to leave systems exposed. Stay tuned, because this story ties directly into our next segment. Alright, so let's talk about the vulnerability that's got the Linux security community on edge right now, Dirty Frag. According to its FOSS, a newly discovered Linux kernel exploit called Dirty Frag can grant a local attacker full root access on a vulnerable system. And here's what makes this especially alarming. A working exploit is already out in the wild. That's not a proof of concept. That's not theoretical. It's functional. And as of this reporting, there is no proper, complete patch available yet. What makes it worse? Even systems that already patched the earlier copy fail vulnerability are still exposed to Dirty Frag. These are related bugs, but distinct enough that fixing one doesn't fix the other. So if you or your organization patched up thinking you were covered, you may not be. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting from an open source transparency angle. Open Source for You is also reporting that the Dirty Frag vulnerability was actually disclosed earlier than intended, precisely because of public Linux kernel commits. Developers working in the open, as the Linux model demands, inadvertently tipped off security researchers and potentially bad actors before patches were fully ready. This is sparking a real debate in the community. How do you balance open source transparency with responsible vulnerability disclosure? Especially now, when AI tools can scan public commits and detect security-relevant changes almost instantly. There's no easy answer here, but it's a conversation the kernel community is going to need to have seriously. Shifting gears from security to the world of game development, and this one is huge for the open source community. As Open Source for You is reporting, Europe is increasingly questioning its reliance on US-controlled game engines like Unity and Unreal Engine, and that skepticism is sending developers straight toward Godot, the fully open source alternative. So what's driving this? A few things. There's the ongoing concern about proprietary pricing models. We all remember Unity's infamous runtime fee fiasco. There's also unease about the AI-heavy strategic pivots both Unity and Epic have been making, which some European developers feel doesn't align with their vision. But perhaps most significantly, there's a broader political conversation happening about technology sovereignty. Europe doesn't want critical creative and industrial software infrastructure sitting on platforms controlled by foreign corporations. If those companies change their terms, jack up their prices, or get caught up in geopolitical tensions, European studios could find themselves in a very uncomfortable position. Godot, on the other hand, is MIT-licensed, community-driven, and beholden to no single corporate interest. It runs on your hardware, your way. And while it's not yet at feature parity with the biggest commercial engines for every use case, it's been improving at a remarkable pace. This push from Europe could inject serious institutional support and funding into the Godot ecosystem, which would be a massive win for open-source game development worldwide. Here's a story that should make every open-source advocate smile. According to AI.cc's 2026 AI API Infrastructure Report, as covered by Open Source for You, enterprise AI costs have dropped a jaw-dropping 67%, and open source and open weight models are a huge reason why. Get this. Open source AI models captured 38% of enterprise token volume in Q1 2026. That number was just 11% a year earlier. We're talking about a more than threefold increase in market share in 12 months. Companies are clearly voting with their wallets, and they're voting for open source. What's also interesting is the rise of multi-model routing. Instead of locking into a single AI provider, say, just OpenAI or just Anthropic, enterprises are now building infrastructure that intelligently routes tasks to the most cost-effective model for that specific job. A cheap, fast open-weight model handles routine queries. A more capable model handles complex reasoning. The result? Dramatically lower costs and reduced vendor lock-in. That last point is key. The open-source world has always been about avoiding lock-in, and it turns out the AI world is learning that lesson fast. This is a genuine inflection point for open-source AI, and the numbers back it up. Big news from the Linux Foundation. As reported by Open Source for You, the Foundation has officially launched a new open driver initiative, and its goal is pretty straightforward but critically important. Make hardware just work on Linux through open-source drivers. The initiative is targeting some of the most complex and high-value areas of hardware support: AI accelerators, automotive systems, networking infrastructure, and next-generation computing hardware. These are all spaces where right now proprietary vendor drivers dominate, and that creates real problems. Proprietary drivers can lag behind kernel updates. They can be abandoned when a vendor loses interest, and they're black boxes that the community can't audit or improve. The Open Driver Initiative wants to change that by strengthening the development, maintenance, and long-term sustainability of open-source hardware drivers. If you've ever had a Linux install where your GPU, your network card, or some specialized piece of hardware just refused to cooperate without jumping through proprietary hoops, this initiative is fighting for you. It's a long game, but having the Linux Foundation's backing means real organizational weight and resources behind the effort. This is good news for the entire Linux ecosystem. Now for a story that's equal parts geopolitics and open source: Huawei's HarmonyOS. Despite heavy Western trade restrictions that have cut Huawei off from major U.S. technology suppliers, the company has managed to build something genuinely impressive. According to its FOSS, the open-source version of HarmonyOS is now powering over 55 million devices. What Huawei appears to have done is build a full ecosystem, both hardware and software, that doesn't depend on Western gatekeepers. HarmonyOS is open source, it's built around their own stack, and it's gaining real-world traction not just on phones, but across a broader range of devices. This is a fascinating case study in how geopolitical pressure can actually accelerate open-source development. When you're locked out of the dominant platforms, you build your own. And if you have the resources and the will, you can make it work. Whether you view this through a geopolitical lens or purely a software lens, 55 million devices running an open-source OS is significant, and HarmonyOS is a project worth watching. Two quick but important community stories to round out today's episode. First, Fedora is jumping onto the AI developer desktop bandwagon. As its FOSS reports, following Ubuntu's move in the same direction, Fedora is planning dedicated AI developer desktop variants spread across 3 new releases. These will specifically target Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, and ARM hardware, basically covering the full landscape of developer machines. This means Fedora will ship with AI development tools, frameworks, and optimized configurations out of the box for those platforms. It's a smart move to keep Fedora relevant as AI development becomes an increasingly core use case for Linux desktops. And finally, a genuinely feel-good story. Its FOSS reports that Dell and Lenovo have stepped up as premier sponsors of the Linux vendor firmware service, better known as LVFS. If you're not familiar, LVFS is the service that delivers firmware updates to millions of Linux devices seamlessly and securely. It's critical infrastructure, and it's been running largely without major corporate backing for a long time. Having 2 of the biggest PC manufacturers in the world now funding it is a huge deal. As the Its FOSS headline says, good job Dell and Lenovo. Hopefully others follow. The open source ecosystem runs on this kind of infrastructure investment, and every bit of it matters. Alright everyone, that is a wrap on today's Genai FOSS news. What a day in open source. From kernel kill switches to crashing AI costs and European software sovereignty. If you found this useful, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. I'll see you in the next one.